This is from the commentary, or at least part of the remastered version's director's commentary of The Last of Us Part 2. And in this, Neil Druckmann's going to describe this scene in a little bit more detail. Let's just see what they say. Again, this is clipped from PGP on YouTube.
Oh, this is the scene that everybody hates us for.
The great mislead.
The great mislead.
For those of you not familiar, this is something I've referenced a handful of times that makes me super uncomfortable. If you remember from the trailer that they dropped, maybe like 2018, 2019, somewhere in there, this clip was shown, and then the hand goes over Ellie's mouth, lifts off, she turns around and sees Joel, and she says, "What the hell are you doing here?" Turns out that's not actually what this is. The person behind her is Jesse. Now, they put that trailer out because they wanted you to believe that Joel was actually like still alive through the whole game. And so the whole time you're like, well, Joel goes to Seattle with her. So the speculation in the months leading up to the game, people thought that Joel was going to die. Even for years, people thought Joel was going to get killed off. So people were like, oh, well, he's in this trailer, so he must be there a little bit later in the game. And it was just a total, not even fake out. It was just a lie. So I've always felt weird about it. I understand why they did it, because they wanted you to not think that he was going to die. But it was still, like, it's still a lie. It's still misleading the customers. So even though there's a reason, it makes me uncomfortable.
Yep.
I guess maybe we should talk about that. When we released that first trailer for the game, a lot of people guessed that Joel was dead. And we were worried.
Because he walks in from like the big white background. Remember, he walks in the house and you think I'm going to let you do this yourself? And everybody's like, he's dead. He's dead. This is like her in a dream realm. That's what it is. Okay. That's it.
After that point, it'll be too obvious. So how can we throw them off the scent? And that's where we came up with the idea of swapping Joel and Jesse here, which I have mixed feelings about in hindsight. It got people excited about something that wasn't there, and our motivation was in the right place of trying to protect the story, but didn't maybe think it through of how it might upset some people.
I remember when that trailer came out, then everybody I knew assumed that then it meant I was gonna die.
Right.
And
which then we just leaned into with other trailers.
Yeah. And everybody was like texting me being like, oh my God, you die. Like, and they were like, it's so embarrassing for you. I was like, what? Wait, I can't say anything. And I was just like, lol. LOL.
Shannon? Who's Shannon? Who did she play? Dina? Is that Dina? I don't recall the name of the actress. I do remember people thinking that as well, so I guess that would make sense. Yeah, she played Dina. Okay. Maybe. I think everybody just assumed, like, in the lead up to... Don't look at me like that, Ellie. Like, she's staring me down. What? Calm down. I think everybody just assumed that there was going to be like a couple of characters killed off, because Neil said in the lead up to the game, he was like, The Last of Us Part 1, he just called it at that point, it was The Last of Us was about love. This game is about hate. So everybody's like, okay, how do you have a game about hate without somebody you care about dying? Like, there's got to be somebody killed off. So there was speculation that Dina was going to get killed off like right away. I remember reading one, I don't know if it was a Reddit post or just a YouTube comment, I don't know, but I remember the lead up before the game came out. The theory was that Dina was going to die early on, killed off by some other faction or something. And then Ellie and Joel would go to wherever the game was going to be, in this case, Seattle, and try to hunt down her killers. And that's why you saw Joel with her. And maybe in the process of that, Joel also dies. But the thought was that the very first like trigger for the story would be Dina's death. And Dina, being Ellie's girlfriend, would cause some sort of emotional push for that to happen. So I remember that being a thing.
Oh. Meanwhile, I think when the trailer came out, we were in the studio that day. We were doing VO, and so we were like watching all the, and I was like, yeah, uh-oh.
I also like that we get to establish, Jesse's in charge, but we never get to see why. Why is this guy so good at what he does? And now we get to see it and get to experience it in gameplay.
Okay.
You ready?
That's interesting. Yeah, I got to go through the whole game with the commentary. I really got to do it. Oh, and he explains the ending?
Originally, the house was fully empty.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
And there was a concern, I think, that we had that it's going to feel like something bad happened to Dina, and we don't want to make it feel like it's...
Right.
That's the thought in her head. It's more, Dina has made that choice to move back.
She had to move back too. She couldn't stay there alone with a baby. It was too dangerous.
But I do think there's something poetic in, like, she didn't take Ellie's things with her.
Yeah.
There wasn't a, I'm waiting for you, I'm going to build a home. It's I'm letting this, I'm letting this die, here. And I'm going to let everything rot for you.
Idiot. It was really hard to feel bad for Ellie after all of this. And then she's got her little stumps here and she can't play the guitar quite right. So it's like even the last thing she had of Joel, she now cannot enjoy because of her choices and actions. I thought that was a good touch, that having lost those fingers now, this thing is permanently altered and she can't connect with Joel in the same way because of her choices.
Well, that's really bleak.
Stump strumming.
Yeah, we wanted to create a metaphor for the unintended consequences of pursuing justice at any cost. And here we get to feel it, of the song that means so much to Ellie, she just can't play it anymore. Also interesting thinking about Joel's headspace right now, like just been humiliated by Ellie in front of everyone. Who knows what's going through his head, but for me, sometimes when I get just filled with anxiety, it's guitar. It's just sitting down and just jamming and just...
Yeah, not even playing a song, just playing through something.
Just play. Let the music take you.
We've had this scene at different spots of the game.
Do you think Ellie goes to find Dina? Well, I mean, I think she would naturally go back to Jackson, at least to check in. She traveled all that way anyways. So I think she probably goes back. I don't know if she actually, I doubt she ends up living there again. Maybe she does, because it would be kind of stupid not to, personally. But it might be really tough to be back there with Dina there. Maybe Dina accepts her back. But this is the nice thing about leaving a story unanswered with those endings open, is that you can kind of fill in the gaps yourself. You can speculate, you can think, and whichever version of the story you would almost prefer to land on, you can settle on, and they don't need to answer it. You can just kind of fill in the gaps as you wish. Where sometimes when all of those questions are answered, it leaves you more frustrated than if you didn't know the answer.
Until we finally landed, it's this final moment.
Yeah, I think originally we were going to put it before the midpoint showdown of the game.
Right.
Oh, it plays so much better at the end.
Yeah, no, now you can't imagine it anywhere else once it's here.
It's cliche if she goes back to Dina. Well, I just mean if they ended up happily ever after, yeah, it'd be cliche. This is why if they were to do a part 3 where she ends up back with Dina and everything's happily ever after, I'm not sure if that's a true to the Last of Us world ending. So I agree, it would be too cliche. That's why leaving it unanswered might be the better option.
They just have a father-daughter moment, just this exchange about this crush that she has on this other girl, and Joel telling her she would be lucky to have you. Again, he has unconditional love for Ellie, and that's what drives her mad. It'd be so much easier if he was just a complete piece of shit.
Oh,
Then you could just forget about him.
Yeah.
But you can't.
I mean, that's what's hard. I mean, she knows that he cares, and she knows that he does love her.
I was supposed to die in that hospital.
I also love that you bring it back to, we're talking around the thing that we need to talk about.
You took that from
And
me.
you doing all of these gestures to try to make it better is not what I want. I'm going to bring it back to what the issue is, and that's I should have died in that hospital.
I also love watching, when do you both decide to make eye contact?
Oh, right, interesting.
And it's right here for I watch at the end of this statement for emphasis. All eye contact. Because I am dead serious. I don't care the cost. I would do it all over again, even if it means I lose you.
There is something to be said for your writing in this, which is, I would do it all over again, and I would do it all over again. Walk the knife's edge of meaning, because there's one that is repentant and there is one that is resolute.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that.
like this false moment. I can never forgive you that. And he's ready to accept it.
I do love that they give it the pause. And he's like, okay, if all of this is like, has led us to this point and I'm going to lose you as a result. Okay.
And then he's all of a sudden, but I'd like to try. And then I think the water works for everyone.
Yeah.
Just start right here. We did a lot of work of just writing these scenes and not being heavy-handed to talk about theme, but there is something about just the placement of the scene here. And it's a scene about getting over some horrible transgression that one feels, because there's other things that are worthwhile in this world than just kind of living in this resentment, next to the moment where Ellie decides to let Abby go. And whether she fully forgives her or not almost doesn't even matter. It's just she knows there's other things in life that are more worth putting your focus on. It's interesting reading, like seeing since the game has come out, it's been out for a few years now, how many different interpretations there are for this leaving of the guitar here. Whether it's she's fully forgiven Joel, or whether she's fully forgiven Abby, or whether she's willing to move on, or whether she just doesn't want to be under Joel's shadows anymore. And when people always like, I don't know if you get this often, people often come to me and they want the answer. They're like, which one is it? And I'm like, it's all those things. It's all those things in some way. Like people's minds are so complicated.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's what we've been talking about with grief and how that can sort of manifest in somebody.
I'll caveat by saying this is my own interpretation. And it doesn't mean that it's right. It's just mine. But sometimes you have so many triggers for trauma that you just need to let anything that might trigger you, you just have to let it go and start over.
I mean, how I felt in that moment of, it's easier just to not get close to people.
We know when we were writing this, we had so many conversations about leaving it on a hopeful note. And even though it's very dark, I do find it to be a hopeful note. It's left with that question of like, once you've committed all these atrocities yourself, can you come back from that? And we saw that Joel was able to, and then maybe Ellie could as well.
I remember, so this apparently, you remember Haley Gross? She's in the documentary as well. Haley, as like the co-writer for all of this, she's apparently the one that put a lot of the like romance and sex scenes and stuff in the game. She pushed for all that because Neil was uncomfortable with it, so she did it. And Neil was very weirded out and did not expect the negative response to these sequences. I think like the Abby sex scene just comes out of absolutely nowhere. So it's just really like, what? I understand in the context of like all of that. It's like, oh, high emotion, high intensity. They just chose to like express themselves. That sounds particularly gross, but they choose to express themselves in this way. So I understand that like how they could arrive at the conclusion that maybe they should have Owen and Abby go for it in that moment. But I think in the context of the story and the pacing of the story and everything that's happening at that point, as things are clipping along, it feels very shocking and jarring. A little bit out of nowhere. Yeah, a little bit out of nowhere. At least like the Ellie and Dina one, it feels like it built to it. Like it made sense. It kind of built up to that point. So I can like appreciate it. Whereas like all of this stuff is just the Abby one is just like, what? This top comment. Ellie left the house and left the guitar behind to find a left-handed guitar. Yeah, kind of probably. So to be clear, this is not a firefly on the guitar. I know some people have said it is, but it's not technically a firefly. It's like a moth. I forget the name of the kind of moth, but it's a type of moth. And this is the symbol for the fireflies, right?
The Gum Cuzzler 69 donated $3. Do you think part 3 will shadow part 1? Ellie trying to protect a kid like Joel did with Ellie.
Maybe like an older Ellie. That could be interesting. Like a 40, 50-year-old Ellie trying to do something. Maybe she comes across another kid, and then it kind of comes full circle with her making similar decisions to Joel. It could be tough to write that without it just coming across as totally contrived and like, yeah, we wrote this where it's just the first game, but with Ellie now. So it would be tough to write. They'd have to find a more interesting way of doing it than just a straight one-to-one. But I do think thematically that could be cool. And I do think a great way to settle the fan base would be to give Ellie some sort of redemption. But they might not want to do that. Ellie was 19 in The Last of Us 2. Her being 25 and taking care of a kid could be cool. Yeah, it could work. It could be interesting to see Ellie after another 20 years. Because like Joel got 20 years after his trauma before we got like the full game with him for his kind of redemption arc. At this point, we haven't really had that. So it could be interesting to see how Ellie kind of sits with all of this stuff for 20 years or 10 years or whatever after the events of The Last of Us Part 2. That could be interesting. So I don't know. I think Tommy DLC could come before Part 3. Maybe not a DLC, but like, I think I know what you mean. Like if they do a sort of Miles Morales type game or a Lost Legacy game with Tommy, I do think that could be really cool. Just a smaller project. It's like 10, 15 hours long, and it's just Tommy, and maybe even Joel is there, and it's just like some fan service. I think at this point, we just need a little bit of fan service to make them happy. I think that's what you need to win back some of the fans. Be like, listen, we still care about these characters. We understand a lot of people were very upset by how all of this stuff happened, but we just need a little bit, a little something. But yeah, some people have said that this is a Firefly. That's wrong. It's not a Firefly. It's a moth. But this is the Firefly logo. I always thought like it was kind of a vague connection where I could also see it be like, it's not a Firefly, but it's visually kind of similar. So pairing it with the guitar, with Joel's object being left behind, also something vaguely reminiscent of a Firefly logo. I always thought it was like symbolic of her leaving all of that behind, not just Joel and then his guitar and those items and all of her stuff, but also this like vague allusion to the Fireflies and leaving behind everything that brought. Is it a stretch? Yes. That's the great thing about art, is that there's no way to be wrong. No matter how wrong you are, you can still be right, because there's no right answer. It's all made up. I'd love to see what Tommy and Joel got up to after the death of Sarah. Oh, dude, it could be another like emotional trudge of Joel just being a total wreck for an extended period. That, I mean, it might honestly not be that entertaining or interesting. It could just be a nightmare. But when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Moths go after the light. I think that's the connection here. That's interesting, Maddie. So it's like when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. So the moth, as she walks off, it's like reminding you that she's walking towards the light. I like that. That could work. That could work. I like that. He took my thing.